All right, happy Friday to you all. I don't know about you guys, but it's been a pretty long semester, hasn't it? There's been a long haul, and then our break was pretty late in the semester, and then right now we got to ramp up for like finals and papers and things like that, but it's been pretty crazy, and I don't know about you guys, but it's been hard for me to ramp back up this last week. Anyone feel me on that? Kind of? Okay, right here, just front row. Okay, thanks. But yeah, you know what? On top of that, it's been super hot. On top of that, there's a lot of things going on. But today what we want to do is we want to dwell on this idea of happiness. On Monday, Dr. David Horner from our Bible department, he led us through Psalm 1, and he discussed this idea of happiness with us, the good life, the flourishing life, the blessed life. And what we want to do today is we want to dwell on a similar passage today that also talks about the blessed life, Jeremiah 17. But before we do that, before we dive in, I want to start by asking you guys a question. I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to think about it, but I don't want you guys to think too deeply about it. Don't think too hard. Just what's your knee-jerk reaction? What's your quick answer to this question? What's the first thing that pops into your head? What's the first image? Really quick. And the question is this: what does happiness look like for you? What does happiness look like? What does happiness feel like? I would be happy if I was blank. What is that image that comes to your mind? Let me give you 3 examples of what could come to mind. For example, these are the first 3 things I thought of. I thought of a hammock on a beach. That seems like happiness, right? Or good food and good conversation with good friends. That feels like happiness to me. Or maybe even standing in front of a crowd and everyone cheering for the person, for me, right? That kind of feels like happiness. Or maybe you don't even want to stand in front of a crowd, right? But what is happiness for you? What is that image of happiness? Knee-jerk reaction. What I'm going to invite you guys to do right now, just before we dwell on Jeremiah 17, is I want you guys to find a partner, maybe 2 people, just 3 of you guys, and share your image. What is that image that popped into your head? What is that one thing that happiness looks like for you? Is that cool? So for about a minute, let's do that, okay? All right, well, I'm just going to gather us back together. And there's a few hundred people in this room. We might have a few hundred images of happiness, and that's okay. And what we want to do is I want you guys to keep your image in mind, and I want us to kind of ponder that a little bit more as we continue this chapel. So we're going to go through Jeremiah 17, and here's verse 5 and 6. I'm going to ask us, let's all read these 2 verses together. Here we go. Ready, set, go. Thus says the Lord, cursed is the man who trusts in the man who makes flesh his strength, whose heart turns away from the Lord. He is like a shrub in the desert and shall not see any good come. He shall dwell in the parched places of the wilderness, in an uninhabited salt land. I'm going to read it one more time for us, emphasizing a few words for us, and grab the picture that Jeremiah 17, 5 through 6 says. It says, cursed is the man who trusts in man and makes flesh his strength, whose heart turns away from the Lord. He is like a shrub in the desert and shall not see any good come. He shall dwell in the parched places of the wilderness, in an uninhabited salt land. Grab that picture, and let's compare that and contrast that with the next 2 verses, verse 7 and 8. I want you to read this with me as well. Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, whose trust is the Lord. He is like a tree planted by water that sends out its roots by the stream and does not fear when heat comes, for its leaves remain green, and is not anxious in the year of drought, for it does not cease to bear fruit. One more time, I'll read that for us a little slower, emphasizing a few words, and again, grab that picture. Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, whose trust is the Lord. He is like a tree planted by water that sends out its roots by the stream and does not fear when heat comes, for his leaves are green, and is not anxious in the year of drought, for it does not cease to bear fruit. In Jeremiah 17, what God basically says is that you can be one of two trees. You can be the cursed tree, you can be the blessed tree. You can be the unhappy tree, you can be the happy tree. There's no third, there's no fourth option. You're one or the other. Now let's make something super clear here. None of us are either one or the other. Everyone is somewhere in between, right? So if we look at this, these are like two trees on a continuum. These are two poles on a continuum. So on this side, we've got the cursed tree or the cursed person. On this side, we've got the blessed person or the happy person. And everyone is somewhere in between. So I'm going to invite you guys to just hold out your hands like this, okay? And with your left hand, I want you to imagine that image of the cursed tree. That is the cursed man. And on your right hand, I want you guys to imagine the image of the blessed person or the blessed tree, the blessed man or the blessed woman. And I want you guys to think of the continuum in between, all this space in between your two hands. And as you look at that space in between, I want to ask you, where do you find yourself today? Between these poles of cursed and blessed, between unhappy and happy, where would you place yourself on this continuum? Are you closer to the blessed side? Are you closer to the cursed side? Are you closer to happy? Are you closer to unhappy? Take a few seconds and place yourself on the continuum. Now, placing ourselves on the continuum is one thing, but another question we could ask is, which direction are you headed? There's basically two directions. We could go direction toward unhappy, or we could go direction toward happy. Which direction would you put yourself in? Where are you heading? Which tree are you becoming? And as you think about all this, as you talk to God about all this, just tell him which tree you'd rather become. Which tree is more appealing? What is your desire? Do you want to be that desert shrub in the parched salt land, or the green fruitful tree that isn't fearful or anxious? And as you guys are doing that, grab that one image, that knee-jerk image that we had. Maybe the hammock on the beach, the good food, good conversation, standing in front of a crowd getting cheered. What was that image for you? And I'd like you to think about what is one step, or what is that desire under that image? What is the desire that that image elicits? For example, for me, that hammock on the beach elicits a lot of desires for comfort, or for rest, or even for pleasure. Those are the desires. The good food and good conversation with good friends elicits desires, or there's desires underneath that, of feeling full or feeling satisfied, or being in an enjoyable environment. Or standing in front of a crowd and being cheered. The desire under that is being loved, or being worthy, or even being known in some sort of way. What is that desire that you long for with that image? And maybe the image that you came up with was wholesome, or maybe it wasn't wholesome. But those deep desires really show us where we are. In fact, G.K. Chesterton says that every man who knocks on the door of a brothel is looking for God. So whether the image that we had, that knee-jerk image, was wholesome or unwholesome, what is that desire under that? Maybe it's comfort, maybe it's rest, maybe it's wanting to be loved or wanting to be worthy. Take a few seconds and think about the desire that you have that you think will lead you to happiness. Well, you know what? I want to affirm those desires that we have. Those desires for comfort, rest, enjoyment. Those are good desires that we have. And the desires give us a clue to what happiness looks like for each of us. Again, there's hundreds of people in this room. We might have hundreds of different images of what happiness looks like. And we might have hundreds of different desires. But all those desires direct our paths toward happiness, and that's a good thing. But that's not really the whole picture. Read Jeremiah 17:9 with me. Ready, set, go. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? Again, our desires are good, but happiness is not simply about chasing our desires. It's not simply about feeding our desires. It's not doing our desires and not just fulfilling our desires over and over. Because at our core, our hearts are deceitful. At our core, our hearts trick us. Our hearts turn on ourselves. Our hearts are delusional even. We try to chase happiness through our desires. We try to chase happiness, but at our core, our heart messes us up and makes us look more like the cursed tree. We can have all the right intentions in the world, but we're delusional, and we're never going to be fully happy simply by following our desires. A lot of times, finding happiness is like trying on different pairs of glasses. The next adventure I put on, yeah, that kind of feels good, but after a while, that didn't really make me happy, so we take it off. We put on the next pair of glasses. Oh, I'll try that boyfriend out. Yeah, you know what, he makes me happy a little bit, but later on, oh, he doesn't really make me happy. You take that boyfriend off. Or maybe it's the next job that you try on. Oh, you try that on, okay, that works for a little bit. You take that off because it doesn't work after a while. Or maybe it's the next accomplishment. All these glasses that you put on and you put off. But what the Bible says here is that happiness isn't found by just putting things on and trying new things and following our desires in that way. It's not about glasses, because ultimately, at our core, the optic nerve for our sight is damaged. We're defective in the way that we see. So no matter which glasses we put on, it's going to be defective. No matter what kind of glasses we put on to try to find happiness, we're always going to be led down the path of unhappiness. Our hearts are sick. It's a condition that we have. It's a damaged optic nerve. It's never going to be fixed by corrective lenses. See, John Calvin thought about all this, and he made a profound observation. He said that our hearts are idol factories. See, the only task that our hearts are really good at is that they're good at making idols. And what's an idol? Idol is taking a good thing, like a good desire, and is making it an ultimate thing. It's trying to cling to it and bring all the happiness out of something. And we make it an idol. We make it our everything. We make it an ultimate thing. Again, good desires are good things, but when we make good desires the ultimate thing, we make them into idols. Our hearts are idol factories. The next boyfriend can be a good thing, but our hearts are going to make that next boyfriend into an idol. The next job or the next accomplishment can be a good thing, but again, our hearts cling to it and squeeze all the happiness that we try to make it, and we try to make ourselves happy through that. Again, our desires are good things, but our hearts are idol factories. We make these good things into ultimate things, and we say, we want you to make us happy. I'm going to ask you guys to put your hand over your heart. And we're not going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, okay? But I'm going to ask you guys to put your hand over your heart, and I just want you to focus on your heart. We started with a knee-jerk image. We went a little bit deeper and we thought about the desire or the desires that are a little bit under that. I want you to take those desires and I want you to affirm that those desires are good. But as you focus on your heart, I want you to recognize that we are defective people. That our hearts are idol factories. That our hearts have a tendency of making those good things into ultimate things. How is your heart prone to make a good desire into an ultimate source of happiness? How do you see yourself maybe even making one of those desires into an idol already? It'd be sad if the story stops there, wouldn't it? The good thing about our God is that there's more to the story. In Jeremiah 17:14, this is Jeremiah's response back to God now. God was kind of talking, and now this is Jeremiah's response back to God. And Jeremiah says this, he says, "Heal me, O Lord, and I shall be healed. Save me, and I shall be saved, for you are my praise." Again, heal me, O Lord, and I shall be healed. Save me, and I shall be saved, for you are my praise. When do you ask someone to heal you? When do you ask someone to save you? You know, I walked to school this Monday. I live about 2 miles from campus. And on Tuesday, my legs were really sore, okay? I promise I didn't pray for God to heal me. I didn't pray for God to save me because I knew that my body would recuperate. On Wednesday, I was playing with my daughter and she jumped on my back and I felt a tweak in my back. And you know what? The rest of the day, she wanted to keep jumping on me and it hurt over and over. And on Thursday, I woke up with a really sore back. You know what? I did pray to God a little bit more, but not in the desperation that Jeremiah does here. See, you know what? We ask for healing, we ask for saving only when we're convinced that there's no other way. Only when we're convinced that we can't heal ourselves, we can't save ourselves, do we ask for help. And that's what Jeremiah did. He saw the deceitful, the delusional nature of the human heart. And he turns to God and he says, God, I need you. God, I can't be happy without you. All my desires will become idols without your saving me. God, help me. God, heal me. I'm going to give you guys a little more space, a little more silence. I'm going to ask you guys a few questions to ponder. How much do you believe in your heart that happiness can be only found through God? A lot of times the images of happiness that we have can be separate from God, but how much do those align? How much do you believe that God's desire is to lead us toward happiness? Do you really think that God has your best in mind? Or how much doubt do you have that God has your best in mind? Express these things to God. If you have doubts, feel free to talk to him about those things. If you have reservations, tell him about your reservations. How much do you really believe that the path to happiness is with God? Before Maylee and the band lead us into one last song, I'm going to ask you guys to do a simple breath prayer with me, okay? So on a breath in, I want you guys to say, heal me, O Lord, okay? And on the breath out, I want you to say, and I shall be healed. And on the breath in, I want you to say, save me, O Lord. And on the breath out, I want you to say, I shall be saved. You could all do this in your head. You don't have to say it out loud, okay? But let's try this. So take a breath in. Take a breath out. Take a breath in. Save me, O Lord. And take a breath out, and I shall be saved. I want to encourage you throughout the day, throughout the weekend, to do something like this. Just as you remember that you're breathing, remember the simple prayer that Jeremiah has, the desperation in his tone, the realization that he can't be happy without God. And through your day, I just invite you to do this breath prayer. And as you do that, just talk to God about where you are. Talk to him about the things that come up, whether it's doubts or reservations, or maybe it's a full trust. Maybe it's more hope for what he has for you. So I want to encourage you to do that.
We hope you enjoyed this message. Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Learn more at biola.edu.